Hi friends, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel, Sunset-Bow Tarot, and today I'm planning on doing a little bit of a fall cleaning and declutter of my deck collection. So I hope you'll stick around with me as we go through which decks are going to be leaving my collection and why. As you all know, I am definitely somebody who tends to declutter my collection relatively frequently. I am someone who enjoys buying tarot decks, but does not hang on to tarot decks I don't use. So anytime something comes into my collection and either doesn't work out or sort of fills a niche in my collection that was previously filled by another deck that I now feel like I don't need anymore, I'll go ahead and let some decks out of my collection. So what that generally means is that I have a pretty consistent inflow and outflow of decks from my collection. It doesn't usually get over a certain size. There's a point at which I sort of start to feel overwhelmed with the size of it, and I have a purgatory box, trademark, I think Julie from Peekaboo Rose is the one who I learned that term from, but I have a bit of a purgatory box where I put decks that I haven't been interested in using in a while, and if they spend a little bit of time in that purgatory box, then eventually I'll notice if I'm not reaching for them, I'm not interested in taking them back out of the box, then it'll be time to move them along from my collection. So these are all decks that have spent some time in my purgatory box, or have otherwise been supplanted in some very obvious way by a new deck. And so these are ones that I'm going to be moving on from my collection. So I will be listing all of the decks down below in the description box, and there will be a couple of those decks that are listed along with their links to the eBay listing, because there are a couple of these that I am going to be selling on eBay. Other decks I will list down below with a price. So if you are interested in purchasing any of these decks from me, I do want to move them all along to better homes. They are all wonderful decks that deserve good homes. So if you're interested in picking any of them up, I will also leave my email address in the description box, and feel free to just drop me a line and we can talk about getting that deck shipped to you. So thanks so much, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first deck that I'm going to be letting go from my collection is the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani. And now I do want to preface this by saying that just because I'm letting a deck go from my collection doesn't mean that it's not a wonderful deck. In fact, these are all wonderful decks, and that's the whole reason I bought them in the first place. None of this is any reflection on any of these decks, anybody who loves these decks, any of the creators of these decks. They're all absolutely wonderful, but for whatever reason, I decided that they don't have a place in my collection anymore. So in this case, the Tarot of the Divine, again, this is an absolutely wonderful deck. So it comes with a little guidebook, and here's the deck itself. Now you'll notice that all of the decks that I show in this video have been put back in order, because I always put decks back in order before I sell them, just to make sure that all of the cards are there and it's all, nice and reordered for the next person who uses them. But this deck is absolutely marvelous. It's incredible artwork. It's based on fairy tales from around the world. This was one of those decks that I really, really wanted to love, and just ended up not ever feeling drawn to work with it. And the reason is, I've said this before, I don't tend to really gravitate toward decks where you have to know a story for every individual card, and the meaning of that card kind of really only comes through if you know the story. It's just a type of fairy tale deck that I've never been attracted to, and it's one of the reasons why the Forest of Enchantment is my favorite sort of fairy tale themed deck, because that deck, you don't actually have to know stories. It's more about fairy tale archetypes than individual stories. This is a deck that absolutely is best if you know the story to fully understand each of the cards and the meaning behind the card. And there is actually an absolutely wonderful book that I will be including with this deck. This book, Beneath the Moon, Fairy Tales, Myths, and Divine Stories from Around the World. This book is absolutely gorgeous. I will admit that I actually do have the Kindle edition of this book, because I love the book and I wanted to actually still have a copy of it so I could read it. And it has the story for every single one of the cards in the deck. So there's a little bit of information in the small guidebook that comes with the deck, but in reality, if you really want to understand all the stories behind the cards in this deck, this Beneath the Moon book is a really important book to have, which I think kind of irritated some people at the beginning because they were like, this is all information that should have been included with the deck. Like, you shouldn't have to buy an additional book along with the deck in order to actually fully understand all the stories in the deck. That it wasn't something that really bothered me. I mean, I get why they wanted to do this separately, because the book in and of itself is a beautiful book to just have. But in any case, I am going to be selling them both together. And like I said, I just never felt drawn to work with this one because I knew that I would really have to put some time and effort into really understand all of the stories behind all of the cards. Some of them are familiar stories, some of them aren't. And so it was just one of those things where I knew that it was going to take me an amount of work to actually get to the point that I could work with this deck. And then I just never felt really called to put that work in. So basically that's what ended up happening with this. I bought it and it just kind of languished on my shelf and I never actually felt truly drawn to work with it. So again, wonderful deck, beautiful, and I am going to be letting it go even though I think it's really, really wonderful. So that again is the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani. The next deck I'm going to be letting go of is the Tarot of Unknown Shadows. This is a deck by a creator known as Dark Cinevere. This is a deck that I believe is still available, but I don't know. I think there's something a bit sketchy with this artist because this deck is available on different Etsy stores than the one that it used to be available on that this creator had, which is now defunct. And I believe that there were some issues when people ordered this deck, and there were some people who didn't get it originally when they ordered it, and I don't know. I think, like, I don't know the whole story there, but I think there's a story there. But regardless, I did order this deck, and there were definitely things that I liked about it. So it does come in a tuck box. It's a pretty nice tuck box. It's got some gilding and it's got a nice texture to it. And so it does also come with a little guidebook. Now, here's one of the weird things about this deck. There are aspects of this deck where I don't know if it's just poor production quality or if it's purposeful. Like, you can see that there's this weird like discoloration on the guidebook, and the pages, have gilded edges. I mean, I'm pretty sure that most of this around the edges of the pages is purposeful, but the gilding all looks a little bit worn, which again, there is like a vintage feel to this deck. I'm sure a lot of that is purposeful, but there's also aspects of it where I don't know if it's purposeful or not. Like, you can see the edging. It does look, it came looking like this, like it came looking pre-worn. The backs also, again, pretty sure it's purposeful. It came looking pre-worn. But then there are some elements on the front of the cards where, like, you'll see that there's little flecks of gilding kind of where they bled over onto the front, or where the cards maybe stuck together a little bit, which again, I'm not sure if that's purposeful or if that's a production quality issue. I don't think it really like impacts the appearance of the deck at all, but I don't know whether or not that is supposed to be there or not. But regardless, this is a very cool deck. As you can see, it has sort of a vintage collage kind of imagery. It has a very sort of spooky, ghostly feel. When I first got this, I was really looking forward to working with it around Halloween time. I got it much, much earlier, I believe in the spring or like late winter earlier this year. And I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll get this one out to mess around with around Halloween. That'll be the time when this kind of imagery will really start to appeal. And then I don't know. Now that time has rolled around, I'm sort of like, I don't know. The vibe of it isn't just calling to me at all. This deck does have 2 additional cards, a light card and a shadow card. So there are some extra cards which you can use or not use. And like I said, I mean, the imagery is really cool. It's this all black and white or sepia tone photography with gilt accents to it. And it's very cool imagery, but I'm just not feeling it. So so this is one where I have decided that I am going to be letting this one go. I have other sort of spooky decks that I prefer to use. Like, this is the time of year when I want to get out my Bohemian Gothic, stuff like that. So I am going to just be letting this one go. I don't think it's going to stick around in my collection. The next deck I'm going to be letting go of, this might be kind of a surprise to people. I'm going to be letting go of the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit Oracle by Kim Krantz. Now, I actually love this Oracle deck, and I've used it quite a bit, and I really enjoy it. I am somebody who never really connected to the Wild Unknown Tarot, but I do like this Oracle deck. I think it's very cool, and like I said, this is one that I've owned for a fairly long time, like, you know, several years, and I have definitely used it. What I found is that I got, you know, as far as animal oracles go, or animal divination, I got a set of tiles by Jamie Sawyer called the Sawyer's Nature Portals tiles. That she also has it in a deck form, but they're these round cards that have illustrations of animals on them, no keywords or anything like that. But the thing that I love about the tiles is that it's all animals that, just about in every instance, it's animals that I have personal experience with, personal connections with, have encountered in the wild, have personal associations with. And as a result of that, I find that to be sort of my animal oracle of preference. I work with the tiles a lot. I draw one every month. I work with it. It's something that I just really, really love to work with. And as a result of that, I realized that I hadn't actually picked this deck up in kind of a long time, despite the fact that this was something that I would have probably called a couple years back one of my favorite Oracle decks. I haven't been reaching for it. I think it's really, really cool, but it's not one that I've been grabbing for. So anyway, again, I still have the whole package. The box for this, the outer box and the sleeve, have both been in storage, so they're still both in really perfect condition. I will say that you know, the guidebook definitely shows some use. There's some like creasing in the cover for sure. I have spent some time with this, definitely. The cards themselves, again, they've seen some use. I think they're still in really, really good shape though. And the cool thing about this deck, again, it's not an animal deck that has any keywords on it, but it is a deck that has sort of a system to it, and it has suits to it. So there's earth animals, there is, let's move on to water-based animals. There's fire animals, and there's air animals. And then there are also a set of cards for animals associated with spirit. So these are all sort of like mythological animals. And the guidebook to this is really, really excellent, and it has a lot of information. But like I said, I've just found that for using an animal oracle, if it's animals that I have an actual real strong personal connection to, then it just works really intuitively for me, and I don't really, you know, I just haven't been reaching for this one as much since I got the Sawyer's Nature Portals tiles. So anyway, I am going to be letting this one go, even though it is a really, really wonderful deck. I love it. I've used it and enjoyed it immensely. And, you know, I want it to go to a good home with somebody who will use and love it, because it is a wonderful deck. So again, that is the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit Oracle by Kim Krantz. So another Oracle deck that I'm going to be letting go of, just because I haven't found myself using or reaching for this one, is this Crazy Sexy Love Notes deck by Chris Carr. This is a really fun deck in a lot of ways. I actually gifted this deck to my sister at one point. It has really cute artwork. It has messages on the back of all of the cards. And you know, this is really like an affirmation or self-care kind of deck. And there's lots of wonderful things about it. I just haven't found myself reaching for it. For as far as like affirmation types of decks have gone, I've really loved reaching for the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle, and so this one just hasn't been seeing any use, so I am going to be letting this one go. From what I can tell, this is a Hay House deck. This one might be out of print. I'm not sure. It's not in stock places and it hasn't been in stock on Hay House. So I don't know if this one has gone out of print or not, but regardless, you know, it is a very nice deck. My copy's in very good condition because like I said, I barely used it. And, you know, I think it's a really sweet one with lots of cool artwork and cool messages. While we're on the topic of Hay House Oracle decks, I am going to be letting go of my Angels and Ancestors Oracle cards. This is another deck that I have used, so, you know, there's like some crease, like the, you know, the guidebook has definitely been used. There's a little bit of, you know, spine breakage and stuff like that. It's just a deck that I have sort of, you know, again, found myself not really reaching for. There are a few cards in this deck that bother me where I don't think that the message that goes along with the image is like quite right or appropriate. So I just am ready to sort of let this one go. You know, like this one really bothers me that the Elder card, the message is move beyond ancestral patterns. Like, I don't know, this to me should be about like respecting ancestral patterns or like respecting traditions. I don't know, like there's just some things where I'm like, I don't feel good about this. So anyway, this is one that I am also going to be letting go of, and you know, and moving along. It just, I don't think we are right for each other anymore. So the next deck that I'm going to be letting go of is the K Tarot Love. Now this is a deck that I originally saw, I believe, on Dawn Michelle's channel Boho Tarot, and this is a really cool deck, and the creator is actually from Minneapolis, which is where I'm from, which I thought was kind of cool. You know, the way that she did the inside of the box, it's all like hands done. It has a crystal glued in there. It comes with this little guidebook. This is a very sort of handmade feeling kind of deck, and it's really cool. It has a very sort of abstract vibe to it. And the artwork is really beautiful. It's just one of those decks that sort of came along, and I think at the same time that I got this deck, I guess I was in kind of an abstract mood, and I got this deck and the Margarete Petersen around the same time. And hilariously, I'm about to be going through the Margarete Petersen in this video as well, because I'm also letting that one go. But I don't know, it just didn't quite speak to me, this one, even though it is really cool. And you know, I like the production quality, and I like the way that the deck is put together. It's got a real quirkiness to it. If you like this sort of slightly more abstract feel to the paintings, and you know, this might be something that really resonates. It's definitely cool. And it is a deck that I believe is still available from the creator on Etsy. But again, that is the K Tarot Love. While I'm on the topic of the Margarete Petersen, let's go ahead and talk about it. So this, again, like I said, I was in a little bit of an abstract mood. I bought this deck and the K Tarot Love around the same time. Here's the little guidebook that comes with it. This is in great condition. I've barely used it. I think I gave it a try reading with it a couple of times and then was just sort of like, nah, I don't know if this is really for me. I was planning on trimming this one. I think it would be really amazing trimmed, and the way that the backs are, like, it would be very easy to give it a good trim and it would look really cool. But then I just also sort of like didn't want to put in the effort because I didn't feel like I loved it enough, even though this is a really cool deck. Like I said, this has definitely a little bit more of an abstract vibe to it and all the artwork, but I still think it's really awesome. And it's one of those decks where if you look closely at the artwork, you can really understand the association of the artwork with the card. But it just, I don't know, it just didn't really connect strongly with me in such a way that I sort of felt like hanging on to it or felt really drawn to modifying it or anything like that. So, you know, this lovely deck is looking for another home, even though it is really cool. So again, this is the Tarot Margarete Petersen. So the next deck I am going to be letting go of is the Commonplace Tarot by Nell Latimer. This deck is one where you may actually recall me decluttering this maybe a year or more ago. That was actually the first edition. This is the second edition. So basically what happened is the creator of this deck put it up on Kickstarter, and I liked the artwork a lot, so I went ahead and backed it. And then when the deck was actually produced, I was actually very disappointed with some of the design and layout choices she had made. Basically what she had done is taken this artwork and made the artwork very, very tiny in the middle of a card with huge black borders on it. And it was just an inexplicable design choice to me. Like, I didn't understand why she had done that. It made the artwork extremely small, and it just really kind of bummed me out. So I let go of that deck because I just didn't like the borders, the design, the layout, you know, the way that it was done. So she came out with a Kickstarter for the second edition of the deck, which came in a nicer box. So this is a nicer two-piece box. The first edition was in a tuck box. This one comes with an actual little guidebook, which I don't believe the first deck came with. And then she made made them larger borderless cards. But anyway, you can see that it's very cool artwork. This is a monochromatic deck, so it is just black and white, but it has very, very cool, very sort of bold, you know, artwork that, you know, really just very immediately suggests which card you're looking at, and it's really cool, and I like it a lot, and it's much, much nicer now that she has made it borderless. The, you know, stock quality is very nice and everything like that, and it's very cool, and I think I'm just at the point where I'm kind of over it. There's no good reason why I'm not hanging on to this deck. Like I said, I do like the artwork and I think it's really cool, but I just feel like I don't know, it's hard to explain. I had too long of a road with this deck and then when I finally got the version of it I liked, I sort of like wasn't that into it anymore, I guess, which I know that sounds super shallow and terrible, but that's sort of kind of where I am with it. And there's really, you know, nothing at all wrong with this deck. It's very beautiful and cool, and I know it will find a better home with somebody who appreciates it more than I do. You know, it just like, this deck and I never got it together. Let's put it that way. So anyway, that again is the Commonplace Tarot by Nell Latimer. So next up is an oracle deck. This is a deck called The Ancient Feminine Wisdom of Goddesses and Heroines. This is by the artist Kay Steventon, who is also the person who did the Spiral Tarot. So, like I said, this is an oracle deck. This is all based on goddesses and heroines from Greek mythology. So, and Kay Steventon's artwork is absolutely beautiful. You can see just how utterly gorgeous this is. This deck has everything going for it. I've actually owned it for quite a long time. I've just like barely ever used it. You know, I have other goddess decks that I like more, that have a little bit more you know, kind of diversity of different pantheons to it. So even though there's a lot about this deck that I really like, it is solely focused on Greek mythology and Greek heroines from mythology as well as goddesses. And so, you know, it just isn't one that I have found myself super, super drawn to, even though there's a lot about it that's very, very cool and beautiful. This is a US games deck, so it is one that is still available in the mass market. And it's super cool, but it just, and there is actually quite a lot of information in the guidebook. You know, it's definitely very usable, I think, but it's just not one that I reach for very much. So I am going to be letting this one go. Next up is an oracle deck. This is the Faceted Garden Oracle. So this is an oracle deck that I got, and I should know better than to do this, but I get these completist impulses where if an artist puts out a deck that I really, really like, in this case, the Faceted Garden Oracle is by the same artist who did the Illuminated Earth Oracle, then I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, I should get, you know, everything that they've created and use them together, or use them as a set, or have a set. But the reality of the situation is that I don't like this oracle quite as much as I like the Illuminated Earth Oracle. It is really beautiful. I love her artwork. And, you know, conceptually it's very cool, but there just isn't as much to this oracle that I find quite as resonant as the concepts that are in the Illuminated Earth Oracle. This is a lot more about just like objects and concepts that don't evoke as much intuitively for me, I think, as what's going on in the Illuminated Earth Oracle. So even though it is really, really cool, and you can see like how utterly gorgeous her artwork is, this isn't one that I've been reaching for because I just reached for the Illuminated Earth instead. So beautiful, beautiful deck. It does have silver gilding on the edges. I mean, it's gorgeous. But it just, like I said, haven't been reaching for it. And there's, even though I know it's by the same artist, there's no reason to hang on to decks by the same artist just because they are by the same artist. It's okay to have an incomplete set. I need to keep telling myself that. So that is the Faceted Garden Oracle. Next up is a deck that you guys are probably going to be a little shocked that I am letting go of. Because I had to finally admit to myself that the only reason I was hanging on to this deck is because I love the Peggy bag that it lives in so much, even though I hadn't been using it and just hadn't really been reaching for it in a while. But this is the Victorian Tarot by Tarocco Studio. So this is a deck that comes in a tuck box. This is a really, really cool and wonderful deck. And this is the kind of deck that, you know, there's a lot of things about it where it should sort of be right up my alley. It's all based on this Victorian engraving style artwork. One thing I will say is that this deck does get a little bit of a bow in it. Sometimes, so it needs to, you know, you might need to bend it back a little bit on occasion to just kind of unbow it a little bit, but that's just how it behaves. I don't know what it is about the cardstock that makes it behave that way, but it does. So anyway, this is all a black and white deck based on Victorian engraving style artwork. It's extremely cool. One of the things that I really like about this deck is that the engravings have the suit symbols actually sort of photoshopped into them, so it is actually very readable as sort of a like Rider-Waite-Smith clone, even though it's using existing artwork, because they did actually ensure that the suit symbols are present in all of the artwork. Like you can see that the Four of Swords, you know, the swords are actually in there. So this is a cool and wonderful deck, but like I said, I hadn't really reached for it much at all for at least the last probably year or so, and the only reason I didn't have it in my purgatory box is because this mustache Peggy bag that I had, that I'd gotten to go with it, cracks me up so hard. Like you can sort of see, because this is a Victorian deck, like so many of the men in this deck have epic mustaches, and so the mustache bag makes me laugh so hard. But the reality is I haven't been reading with this deck, so I need to let it go. That said, I cannot separate it from its hilarious Peggy bag because I have no idea, like I cannot think in any realm of another deck that this bag would go as well with. So I will be letting this deck go along with its Peggy bag because I firmly believe that they should not be separated. It makes me laugh too hard. So anyway, that is the Victorian Tarot by Tarocco Studio. The next deck I am going to be letting go of, this is just kind of random, but I'm going to be letting go of my Smith-Waite Centennial deck in a tin. The reason that I'm letting go of this one is just because I have other tin decks that I use more, and specifically I have a bridge size edition of the Pam's Vintage Tarot, and so if I'm going to be carrying around a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, a mini Rider-Waite-Smith in my bag, it's going to be my Pam's Vintage and not this one. So this one just hasn't really gotten much of any use recently since I got that mini Pam's Vintage, so I'm just going to be letting it go. You know, it's just the Smith-Waite Centennial in a tin. All right, so next up, before anybody freaks out, let me make really clear what's happening here. Here I have a Sasuraibito Tarot and a Numinous Tarot. Now, these are two of my favorite decks. The only reason I'm getting rid of these is that I rebought them with different cardstock. So both the Sasuraibito Tarot and the Numinous Tarot have recently come out in a matte cardstock. The Sasuraibito came out in a matte that still has gilding, but it is matte, it's beautiful. And the Numinous Tarot came out in a linen finish with no gilding. And so I rebought both of these decks because they are favorites of mine, and I wanted them in the new beautiful cardstock format. So I am selling my old glossy editions. That is all that's going on here. I do have the guidebook for the Numinous, so I will be including that, but I don't have a box for it. The original glossy version of the Numinous Tarot came in sort of a big kind of floppy, you know, paperboard box with like a big plastic insert in it, like a plastic tray that the cards were in, and I threw that away a long time ago. So I am going to be sending it in this organza bag, and also I do have the guidebook to go with it, so that will also of course be included. But that's all that's happening here. I'm letting go of my old glossy editions because I take lots of pictures and videos of my cards, and I prefer to have matte editions if at all possible. So I did rebuy these two favorite decks of mine in the new matte format. Speaking of the Numinous Tarot, I am also actually going to be letting go of my copy of the Threadbound Oracle. This is another victim of that situation whereby I like try to be a completist with the work of a particular artist, and then the reality is I only actually use one of the decks and I don't really use the other ones. So this is the Threadbound Oracle. This is by Cedar McLeod, who is the same artist as the Numinous Tarot. They do beautiful art, and this is an incredibly cool deck. It's a cool oracle deck. It's based on sort of concepts around books and the materials that make up books, and it actually has a bit of a system where it has suits, like the suit of paper, the suit of ink, etc. It's just not one that I really have reached for or found myself drawn to use. And again, you know, I need to say to myself, you don't need to be a completist with a particular artist's work. If you have one of their decks and you use it, and you have another one of their decks and you don't use it, you can let go of the one you don't use. So that's what's happening here. So again, this is the Threadbound Oracle by Cedar McLeod, same creator as the Numinous Tarot. So I'm also going to be selling a couple of books. Just to clarify as well what's going on here, this is the companion book to the Prisma and Cosma Visions. This is the big book that came out with the most recent Kickstarter that James R. Eads did for the Cosma Visions, and I by accident ended up with 2 copies of the big book. So I have my copy over on my shelf, and I by accident ended up with an extra copy of it. So I am going to be just selling my extra copy. Like, you'll notice that I haven't even gotten it out of the plastic. So again, this is just the big extra book that goes with the Cosma Visions and the Prisma Visions. If you read it from one side, it's the Cosma Visions book, and if you flip it over, oops, and read it from the other side, it's the Prisma Visions book. This book is absolutely stunning. I'm not going to take it out of the plastic. You can find many looks at this book online if you want to see the inside of it, but the artwork is gorgeous. The print quality is gorgeous. It has these like black edges. It's so beautiful. And like I said, I just am selling my extra copy. Another book that I randomly have is I have this copy printed on Lulu of the first edition book of maps that goes with the first edition of the Spirit Keepers Tarot. I do not have the deck. I sold my first edition Spirit Keepers deck ages ago, but I still have this copy of the book of maps that goes with it. I now have the books that go with the Vitruvian edition, and I also have the 3rd edition of the Spirit Keepers Tarot coming soon, which has its own book of maps that is specifically written about that edition. So I really don't need this copy of the first edition book, so I am going to be selling this copy. So if you are someone who has a copy of that first edition Spirit Keepers, but you didn't buy the, you know, extra package that came with the book of maps that you could get printed out on Lulu, here is a copy of it. So I am going to be selling this as well. Finally, I've got a couple of extra special decks that I am going to be letting go of. Please don't be mad at me. I am actually going to be putting these next 2 decks on eBay because I don't know how to price them. These are both in-demand decks that are out of print, not going to be reprinted, or reprinted anytime soon, and like I said, I just simply don't know how to price these, so I am going to be putting these up on eBay. So I am going to be letting go of the Healing Waves Tarot. So this is a campaign that was recently on Indiegogo. This is an absolutely stunningly beautiful deck. I love the artwork of this deck. I was super excited backing this on Indiegogo. It's gorgeous. It does come with this little card that tells you how to download the guidebook, just so you know. So I folded it up, unfortunately, but I did put it inside there. It also comes with a certificate of authenticity. So this is a deck that the creator has said will not be reprinted ever, basically. So so I have seen this one in some demand. My issue with this deck, it's got beautiful watercolor sea life artwork. I love the artwork. She painted all of these watercolors with actual seawater, is the water that she used to paint all of these. I love the concept of that. There is nothing I don't love about this deck except the cardstock. It has a rose petally cardstock that just frustrates the crap out of me when I try to shuffle it. And so I didn't know that's the kind of cardstock it was going to have when I backed it. And since I've had it and I've tried to work with it, it just irritates me. so so I am sadly going to be letting this deck go because quite frankly I'm just not going to reach for it, and also because there are some other ocean themed decks that I am quite excited about that are going to be coming out. There's going to be the Ocean Tarot by Taylor Hultquist Todd, who I really like her artwork. There's another Ocean Tarot being worked on that is a similar sort of watercolor art style called the Known Sea Tarot, which looks really cool, that I'm excited about. So I am going to be letting go of my healing waves just because every time I try to shuffle this, it just frustrates me, and it's just better if I let it go to somebody who will love and appreciate it. You can see the production quality is actually gorgeous. It has these beautiful matte blue edges. You know, the backs are beautiful. The printed quality is beautiful, and it is actually like the cardstock feels lovely in the hand. It just it drives me crazy when I try to shuffle it. So like I said, I am going to be putting this on eBay because I know that this is in some demand because the creator has said she will never be printing it again. And so, like I said, I don't know how to price it. So that's what I'm going to be doing with it. Finally, here's another little bit of a shocker. I am going to be letting go of my Mythical Creatures Tarot. So this is a Baba Studio deck. I actually have done a full walkthrough of this deck. I'll put that up in the card so that you guys can see what it looks like. This deck is absolutely stunning. I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience before where you buy a deck and it's so beautiful, like just stunningly gorgeous. This deck is incredible, and it's Baba Studios, so it's, you know, incredible production quality. It's got all this beautiful shimmery gilding on it. I mean, it's so beautiful, and it just, like, the artwork of it really doesn't make me feel anything, I guess, is how I would put it. Like, I don't feel attached to this deck. I don't feel like drawn in by it. It feels a little remote to me, and I don't know why that is. There's no particular reason why that should be. This is a pip style deck. It's so beautiful. I mean, in the way that the pips are decorated and everything, but just so you know, this is a pip deck. That's not the reason why I'm getting rid of it. Like I said, it just is, I don't know. I don't feel a personal like tie or relationship to this deck. So I'm going to be letting it go. This is another one where, because it is out of print, it is an in-demand deck. You know, Baba Studios decks tend to go for a fair amount when they're out of print. So I am going to be putting this one on eBay because I want to price it for what people are willing to pay, and that is the easiest way that I know of to do that. So again, you know, forgive me. I don't know how to price it fairly other than to put it on eBay and have people bid on it. So I will also be including the book. Like many Baba Studios books, it's absolutely beautiful. This one is signed by Karen Mahoney, and it's lovely. Lovely, wonderful, full of information, incredible book. There's nothing wrong with this. It's the most wonderful deck. It's a purely emotional thing for me where I just don't feel myself being attached to it or wanting to reach for it for whatever reason. But it's wonderful. So again, I'll be putting this one on eBay, and the two decks that I am going to be putting on eBay, I will have links down below to the listings on eBay if you are interested in bidding on them. And then finally, a little giveaway just for funsies. You guys know that I do tend to do this anytime I do a deck declutter. If there are some decks where it's like I wouldn't necessarily be able to get enough money for them to make it even worthwhile to ship them necessarily, I usually will give those away as freebies. So my two freebies that I'm going to be giving away are the Touchstone Tarot. This is the mass market edition of the Touchstone Tarot. I literally just bought this in order to do a comparison of the mass market and independent editions. Now that I have done that comparison, I feel I no longer need my mass market edition because my well-loved, battered, adored indie edition is what I use and have, and so I just don't need to hang on to this. So the first person who buys another deck from me and tells me that they would like me to include this copy of the Touchstone Tarot will be receiving it for free. So again, first person to buy another deck, one of the ones listed down below with a price, and tell me that they also want this deck included, will get this deck for free. So this is a first come, first serve freebie. The other little freebie deck that I will be giving away, I've got it in this little velvet bag. This is a deck you can get on Make Playing Cards. This is fondly known, I think, of as the Veronica Jude deck. It is a tiny little deck. It's Make Playing Cards cardstock, so it's really nice. This is what the backs look like. And this is a deck that is entirely made up of like words and quotations. So it's still in order because I actually never got this deck out of order because I always intended to mark the actual cards on them so that I knew which cards they were because, you know, I mean, obviously the quotes align with the meaning of the card they represent, but there isn't actually, like, you can see how it might potentially get confusing to figure out again what card is what after you shuffled it. So I always had the intention of just writing on these, you know, what card it was, but then I just never got around to it, and it's just a sweet little deck. It's really cool, but I haven't felt really drawn to read with cards that really work this way. So again, this is going to be a fun little freebie that I will be including with another deck. The first person, again, who orders another deck from me and asks me to include this one will be getting this one thrown in for free. So again, this is called the Veronica Jude deck. It is created by a fellow tarot tuber and lovely human being named Veronica Jude, and it's something that I purchased on MakePlayingCards.com and just haven't reached for, so I am going to be letting this one go as well as a freebie. So that's it. Thanks for following along with me while I did this rather large declutter. I'd been kind of saving up decks for a while, ready to do a declutter, so I'm pretty excited to be clearing out my purgatory box, and I hope all of these wonderful decks find lovely new homes with people who will enjoy and appreciate them. So once again, all of the decks that I have in this video with prices will be listed out down below. The two that I'm putting on eBay, there will be links down in the description box to the eBay listing, so you can check that out if you want to. And there will also be information on how to email me if you are interested in purchasing any of these decks. Just a reminder, these two, this is again the Mass Market Touchstone Tarot and the Veronica Jude Tarot, I will be giving away as freebies to the first person who buys another deck from me and asks me to also throw in one of these. Again, these are first come first serve freebies, so just, you know, if you want to buy another deck, just let me know that you want one of these too, and if you are the first person to ask, I will throw it in. Only one of these per person, please. So like the first person who emails me, please don't ask for both of these, just pick the one that you really want. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for your time, everyone, and I'm so glad that you joined me while we talked through this declutter. Have a great one. Bye-bye.